Welcome back. My name is Nick, and I have Kyle here with me, Pecos with a zero on Instagram. And today we're going to be doing a deep dive on the Choam Company.
Yep, that's a deep dive. All right, we're going to do it.
And just so you know, he's a super talented artist. He also helps designs a lot of our shirts. We got some cool Dune merch on our site, the Best Nerdy Search, bestnerdyshirts.com. It's where we've been posting our posters and shirts and other fun stuff that we cover here. We've been converting into shirts. So go over there, check it out. And today, Kyle's just going to take us down the rabbit hole of Dune again, or the wormhole. Sorry.
I don't know if I want to go down this wormhole, if you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so
and
today
also, sorry to interrupt, just so
Yes.
you know, we cover a lot of Dune content here, ranging from Spice to the Bene Gesserit to the Spacing Guild. Like, you name it, we're covering it. And we have tons more planned all the way up to Dune 2. So I'm super excited for all these deep dives.
So much. Dear God. Okay. Yeah, so today we're going to be covering Choam, or the Choam Company, or in its extended version, Combine Honnet over Advancer Mercantiles.
Dang.
So that's what Choam stands for. So yeah, in case y'all were wondering. So I want to begin with this quote from the Dune book series. Choam, the Combine Honnet, was much more than House Atreides, much more than Dune, much more than the priesthood or melange. It was ink vines, whale fur, shiga wire, Ixian artifacts and entertainers, trade in peoples and places. The Hajj, those products which came from the borderline legality of Tleilaxu technology. It was addictive drugs and medical techniques. It was transportation via the guild, and all of the super complex commerce of an empire which encompassed thousands of known planets, plus some which fed secretly at the fringes, permitted there for services rendered. When Idaho said Choam, he spoke of a constant ferment, intrigue within intrigue, a play of powers where the shift of one duodecimal point in interest payments could change the ownership of an entire planet. And that is a quote from Alia Atreides, the daughter of Paul, on her comments on Choam from Children of Dune. But we're not going to be focusing on...
So that's kind of a spoiler then, a daughter from Paul?
Yes, it's kind of, right? You can bleep that out if you want, Nick.
No, it's fine. I'll bleep it in.
But basically, as with most of these deep dives, now we could talk extensively into from here all the way to Chapter House Dune, which is the full 6 books. But what we're doing is they're centered around just the first book because it's in context with the movie. So I'm going to keep it pretty curtailed to just their history leading up to the point of where they currently are in Dune. So Choam is one of the major galactic organizations in the time of the Book of Dune, so where we currently are in the movies. So basically, Choam has a gigantic monopoly encompassing all forms of commerce across the Imperium, which essentially controls all economic affairs across the cosmos, right? So it relies on the Spacing Guild for space transport due to the Guild's monopoly on FTL travel, right? And if you guys are wondering, we did cover the Spacing Guild last time. Yes.
A deep dive. It was
Choam
super cool.
touches almost all products the Guild will transport. So like from art to technology to, of course, spice, right? Now, many houses within the Landsrand depend on Choam profits, and an enormous proportion of those depend on spice.
Everything in this universe.
Yeah,
depends
it's all
on
it's
spice,
all
right?
connected to spice in some way. Most economic ventures are conducted through Choam, in which the Imperial House, the Landsrand, the Bene Gesserit, and the Spacing Guild all have a stake. However, the Spacing Guild and the Bene Gesserit are silent partners. Now, Choam directorships are like the real evidence of political power in the Imperium, and essentially the key to wealth, right? So directorship passes to other individuals as voting strength within the Landsrad shifts, right? So this is more or less a political mechanism to balance the Landsrad and the Imperial House, which is really fascinating. We'll get a little bit more into that, right? Choam is it's essentially a feudal corporate entity that is like bootstrapped to government, which I think is really fascinating. We'll get a little bit more into those mechanics later. So a little bit of the history of Choam and how they came to be. So I like to break it down into three time periods, right? So there's before the Butlerian Jihad, there's after the Butlerian Jihad, and then there's what I like to call the Synod deadlock, right? So before the Butlerian Jihad, there wasn't like a single ruling power or economic organization among the inhabited worlds, right? So like virtually every state had access to interstellar trade and travel, and none could be excluded, right? So like though this trade and travel between planets and stars was like basically anarchic, it thus like space piracy was very common, right?
And it would also take longer to travel too, right?
Yes,
Because we
so
didn't
that's
have
the
the
thing.
spacing guild yet.
This is before the guild, so it took years upon years, right, through relativistic speeds, and it was also very local. It was more interplanetary than interstellar, and we'll get into that. So like after the Butlerian Jihad, right, interstellar trade fell into a dark age, right. So like trade during this time resembled like ancient trade caravan routes, in which like planets and star systems separated by the vastness of space, right? They were really hard to get to, so it became a slow and expensive business to move goods around. So like with the economy like mainly dealt in the transport of luxury goods, so something with high value, low bulk, right?
Spice.
I don't know if
Oh.
this is before the discovery of
that's
spice.
true, because they wouldn't. Yeah, because how long it would take.
Yeah. And then, that's right, because the Spacing Guild brought forth the knowledge of spice to the Landsrad and the Emperor. So then came the time of the Synod deadlock. This now we spoke about the Synod last episode with the Spacing Guild because they were key players in that event. So basically, this is when the one of the emperors basically wanted to consolidate power within the Landsrad, the Spacing Guild, and the Imperial House, right? And so a couple years after the Spacing Guild made itself known, Emperor Saudir I called for the Financial Synod. So it included representatives of the Guild, the Landsrad, and the Imperial House. So several years of infighting followed as their plans to find a balance of power between them like stalemated. So the Guild's main aim was survival and like a stake in the new political balance, right? But unlike the Guild, the feudal houses cared about the economic benefits of trade and the possible socio-political effects of cultural interaction that interstellar trade would bring. Right? So it was splitting hairs there. So the deadlock was broken after about 2.5 years by the emperor and his chief financial officer, Diocedes I'm going to try that again. Diocedes AsArt. There we go. The emperor called the delegates into full session and presented the plan for the formation of Choam. So it was.
That's why we're here.
Yep.
The title of this
that's
episode.
right, baby. It was Diocedes who then devised the distribution of shares between the factions. Right. So there were, of course, minor revisions after this, but ultimately a charter was signed and the corporation of Choam was born. So now I talked about the dividing of shares amongst people because it still acts like a company, right? Like they have like a common stock exchange.
Shareholders,
so we're gonna
they have their meetings, they look at the value of the company.
Exactly. And now we're going to go a little bit into that structure, right? So Choam's management and board of directors are controlled by the Padisha Emperor and the Landsrad, right? So the Spacing Guild and the Bene Gesserit are silent partners, as I mentioned. So because of this, because of its control of interstellar commerce, Choam is the largest single source of wealth in the empire, right? No one else really rivals it. And so
not even SpaceX or Amazon.
Yeah, I know, right? And so influence in Choam through like internal partisan or like directorships, right, is the central goal of political maneuvering, right? So like basically it grants power to both for that person to receive dividends and also to skim off profits. So they're drinking from both ends of the straw here, right? Sounds like they need some regulation. If you
sounds
ask
pretty
me,
corrupt.
Yeah. So the structure of Choam is similar to that of a publicly held corporation. So like a publicly held org, it consists of shareholders and like major shareholders who are given directorships to lead on the board of directors. right? So in this case, though, all the shareholders are nobles from the Landsraad, which consists of the minor houses, the great houses, and the imperial house. So it's kind of like an oligarchy, right? A corporate oligarchy.
Which is owned by the government.
Yeah, which is a part of the government, right? Which is so the great houses hold the directorships of the company, but the emperor is able to give out and revoke directorships at his discretion. So Choam provides this like really crude system of checks and balances, right? And like, so directors vote with their own shares in the meetings of the board and shares of any house that wishes to grant them a proxy. So it's almost, okay, so like, so the amount of shares you have determines the weight of your vote, right? So kind of like how the Electoral College functions for presidential elections in the US. So like, rather than shares, it's population in that case, right? This was also one of the reasons Emperor Shaddam IV and the Harkonnens moved so quickly after House Atreides took over Arrakis. This gives some context to the first movie, right? So their possession of Arrakis had elevated the Atreides house to a directorship within Choam. And so the balance of power would have probably shifted because Leto's popularity was skyrocketing, right? So as so he would have greater voting power through proxies. So I love, like, that was a really cool little tidbit that I was finding out, is that sort of political mechanism that Choam plays in how the balance of power can shift, right?
And why did they attack them too?
Yeah. So once again, everyone, it's all about money and politics.
Who would have known?
At the end of the day. So yeah. And that's about it.
That's cool. I mean, it's also very realistic too, that like a corporation / government / emperor will have control and manage things. And it's also like the way he's persuade. Is he truly voting in everyone's best interest, or is it in the best interest of the company?
It's totally his interests.
Okay. Yeah, true, because it's basically the company, right? He's probably the biggest shareholder too, right? The emperor?
That's a great question. I don't know.
That's
shout out in the comments if you have any info on that.
And also, thank you guys so much for leaving comments on these videos. Just so you know, every comment is entered to win one of our cool shirts. So just comment in all the videos so you can have a chance to win. Our last winner was History of the Racer Button. Thank you so much for doing the comment. It was awesome. Yeah, we're gonna get you your shirt and stuff like that. Just reach out to us so we can get that over to you. And then just so you know, Kyle's a super talented artist. And go follow him on Instagram, Pecos with a 0. He's so talented. He does a lot of cool sci-fi art there. He has his own sci-fi side project he's working on. It's super awesome. And he also helps designs the cool shirts at thebestnerdyshirts.com. So if you go there, check out our Dune stuff. We got a really cool poster. We're there for Severance. We're there for His Dark Materials. You name it, we're making content for it. And we'll see you on the next AsArt. Do worms have a sharehold in the company?
They should, based on how much spice people are jacking out of them.